Hello, this is Broderick Smith with John Broughton on Retrospectives, celebrating 25 years on the air on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Thank you.
Just like a boy on the run.
Okay.
Yep.
You were born in England, I believe.
Yeah, I was born there in the late 40s.
Was music a passion for you over there, or did that not eventuate till you came to Australia?
When I was a kid, I wasn't that aware of popular music as such. I tended to listen to things like Grieg and old English folk songs and stuff like that, and which I liked, but it was not. I mean, I was only a kid. It wasn't a big part of my life. I liked books and the movies, and then when I came out here, excuse me, I was into sports big time.
First time we heard your name, Dan, he would have been with the Adderley Smith blues band. How did that one all come together?
The Adderley Smith Blues Band was already formed when I joined them. They'd had a variety of singers, and they found me. I can't even remember where they found me. Oh, through one of the singers they had, knew me and recommended me to the gig. So I joined the band. The band, I think, was originally formed by Karen Tolhurst and possibly Mark Dindus, who was the keyboard player.
Was it a healthy blues scene here at that time? Was it easy to find like-minded musicians?
Well, the blues bands that played were kind of lumped in with the pop groups because of the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds and the Animals and so forth. So we would play the same circuit as all the other groups, but we'd be relegated to the odd spot, you know. And then there was a club upstairs, and I mean, you'd have to talk to Keith Glass about this, which I can't remember the name of it. There was a club upstairs in Melbourne that specialised in R&B. People like the Pink Finks and so forth would go and play there.
I believe for a while they used to work at Allen's.
Yeah, I worked at Allen's Music going back now, for about 2 or 3 years, and then I was drafted. And then after I came out of the army, I spent another year there.
What were you doing with them?
I was working in wholesale sheet music, actually, and I took over the job from Gary Young.
Oh, right.
He was the guy there before me. He left to join the Cherokees, I think it was.
Now, there was another band in there briefly before Carson, a band called Sundown. What can you tell us about that one?
Sundown was a band that was formed when I got out of the army. It was Keith Glass approached me, who I knew from the old blues days, and he approached me to do a like a rural rootsy singer-songwriter kind of band, and so he'd play Marvin Wayne Rainwater songs and so forth. He'd play a lot of country stuff because he was very much into that, and I like more the Neil Youngs and the Van Morrisons, the Randy Newmans, and all those kind of people. So we did a variety of that stuff. And we actually ended up having Barry Windley, who was the drummer from the Cherokees. Actually, Gary Young joined the Rondells, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, getting old here. And Sundown was a band that just played. We played at hippie joints. Well, we were sort of like we were a real oddity because we were playing the aforementioned stuff that people didn't even know what it was.
Is there a link or comparison to be made with that band and the music you eventually made with the Dingoes?
Well, I'd always been interested in rootsy stuff, and I'd like old bush songs very much. And I'd listen to A.L. Lloyd, you know, the old album Across the Western Plains on Wattle Records or something. So I'd listen to a lot of that stuff. And the Dingoes came out of, it had degrees of that in it, that's for sure. Because Karen told us, I think at the time, was getting right into Rykuda and so forth. And then the Dingoes was basically formed out of a synthesis of bush music and R&B. That was our charter.
Right. You're on record as having left Sundown because you weren't keen on the country direction, is that right?
I wasn't really that into the country thing because Keith was into really traditional, what you'd call country pop from the late 50s and that sort of style of it, which I really wasn't that much into. I was more into I guess what you call the deep and meaningful
singer-songwriter type.
Yeah, singer-songwriter stuff. And Sundown moved more and more towards the country, which is a natural progression.
You joined Carson after they'd already formed as well. Were you there when they changed their name down from Carson County Band?
That was at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't particularly like it because I thought it was too American.
Mm-hmm.
And even the word Carson had that sort of thing. But by cutting it down, it made it less that way.
Uh-huh.
And Carson County Band sounds like a country band.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, which they definitely were not.
No, absolutely not. No. Now, that band split not long after Sunbury 73. What brought about the sudden end to that band after such a major gig?
Well, the band was playing very well, but the guys were listening to Sonny Sharrock and Mahavishnu Orchestra, the two guitarists, listening to a lot of stuff like that, so we'd be learning songs, tunes, I should say, that they'd written, because you couldn't really put lyrics to them at that point, that had really, really strange time signatures. So it was getting harder and harder for the drummer he'd spend most of the night counting. So the two guitarists could go off to the planet Zirxon or somewhere, and it was great. It was really exciting music, but the crunch came when we were playing the last few gigs together, and the audience were like virtually tripping up. They just couldn't dance to it.
Yeah.
And if you're playing in dance halls, that's sort of kind of odd.
You have the distinction of having played at every Sunbury festival. How do you look back on those festivals now? When do you think it peaked for you?
It was probably the first or the second one. The end of it was the last one. I mean, they'd spent... I had the feeling when we were playing it we weren't going to get paid, because they'd spent a fortune bringing out Deep Purple and Queen, who did, I think, their first ever gig at Sunbury.
Right. Is that the one where it rained all weekend, basically?
It did rain a lot.
Yeah.
But that's festivals. It's either raining or it's a drought. An overfilled toilet.
Yeah. Now, that first Dingoes album, it's seen as a classic Australian album now. Do you remember having a special feeling about it at the time of recording? Could you feel you were sitting on something special there?
Not really. The only thing we felt that was kind of special about it is that we were deliberately trying to have an Australian name and to sing original songs about us and where we lived. The place that we lived. Mm-hmm. So without being overly, professionally Australian, if we'd written a song where we'd gone through Seduna or whatever, say Karen had, that word would be in there to place it in a map context,
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, see, there have been bands before that we were aware of, like the original Bushwhackers, not the Dode Newton guys, but the guys from the 50s. They were bush folk groups. So we felt that we were kind of linked to that in a way. And also, Karen had been in Greg Quill's Country Radio, which had already blazed a trail, kind of, in that scene. So we were extensions of some things that had gone before in our own way, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a blueprint, I guess, to fuse that bush music tradition with contemporary singer-songwriting type sound.
Yeah, we sort of put the two together because we realised that the Anglo-Irish folk music heritage is huge, and with lots of great story songs and a lot of the ones with the Irish melodies, like the Old Triangle or whatever, things like that, they're just beautiful. So you would have been kind of crazy to deny that stuff existed,
Mm. The band certainly had its share of drama at its time. I believe there was a shooting incident involving Chris Stockley. Do you remember those circumstances?
Well, yeah, I wasn't there. I was at home, actually. But they'd all gone off to a party, and some fellas had come up in a car, and I think they tried to get in or wanted some beer or something, then just fired some random shots, and everybody ducked. But Chris has got very bad eyesight.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't know what was going on, apparently, and he turned around, like, what's going on, and ended up with one of the bullets in his back. So everybody else was down, and he was up,
It put him out of action for quite a while, didn't it?
It did. I mean, you'd have to ask Chris, obviously, about the traumas that he went through within himself over that, which, obviously would have been extreme.
How intent were you all on breaking through in America? Was that a very special focus for you?
I think everybody in a band when you're young, goes to bed and dreams about winning a Grammy or something, or playing in my case, playing a Monica and Muddy Waters band or something. I don't know what I was dreaming about. But we hadn't really thought about that a great deal. We were actually on the point of breaking up when we got the offer to to go to the States. So we sort of went, let's not break up, let's go do this.
Generally,
We'd gone as far as we could at that time, and that was the mid-70s, and there was a lot of that other stuff coming through. Skyhooks were getting real big, we're doing their sort of Aussie, what's that guy, the Alex Harvey band sort of thing,
Yep.
And there was a change coming in the music, which we weren't part of, and when that happens, then you get pushed aside. That just happens. So we decided we'd run our course, and we kind of wanted to go off and do different things, all of us. But then the offer came, and we thought, bugger it, let's go do it.
Generally, how did the band go over there? Were there pockets of areas that were stronger for you?
Yes. Well, we lived in upstate New York area, so the eastern seaboard was strong for us. And we also lived in San Francisco, so the northern beach areas of San Francisco were good. It took us a while to get into Southern California, into that ethos of that place. And we did that kind of out of San Diego more than anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the eastern seaboard, we ended up playing a lot. And I guess because we coming from a European-based society, that we sort of fitted more over there as opposed to, say, the Spanish-American society down in California and so forth.
Was it a band decision to re-record a lot of songs for the 5 Times the Sun album, rather than completely go with new material?
Well, they had the albums, and that was the album. There was the one that's kind of tipped our manager Peter Rudge into taking us, and Billy McCartney, who got the deal together, was an Australian tour manager. He'd originally worked for Elvis, and James Burton and Glenn Harden and all them had liked our stuff, and they actually, at different times in Vegas, they'd use the tape of our album as part of the music for when the people came in and sat down to see Elvis. So there was an interest in that original album anyway.
Yep.
When the producer and that got together, he listened to the new stuff and that stuff and made it, which happens a lot, where you make an album out of the best of the bunch of songs you got.
Yeah.
And it's your initial album for the world, because we left Australia, so we were then looking at the world. So it didn't matter that we'd recorded some of those songs before.
Now, you were tied up with the same management stable as Leonard Skinner, and the history books have it that the plane crash that decimated that band indirectly, I guess, led to the demise of the Dingoes. Is that pretty much how you see it?
Yes. We were due to start that tour with Skinner about 3 weeks later, when their accident happened. We were going to go and do that tour and then do stadiums. It was their first actually big stadium tour. Skinner at that point has still been running in the red, and that tour was about to blow them into a major world act, like the Allman Brothers or whatever.
Mm.
And the manager we had, Pete, was a very a man of the heart, and a good friend of his is Bill Kerbishley over there, was a promoter. His brother died on the plane, and the guys in Skinner and the crew, and he just, it really rocked him emotionally or spiritually as a person. So he kind of withdrew at that time, and that was a large extent to why it was the end of us. Although we did get the guys that managed, the guy that managed 38 Special was pretty keen on taking us on too, because we got on very well with him. He was Italian American. I think he was from a mafia background. He was maybe a grandson. And that one's, this is funny contradiction in terms here, if you don't know those sort of people. He was actually a very nice guy, and was right into what the music that we did, and he wanted to manage this as well. But we'd sort of also lost something as a band out of all of it. And you live in another country for a couple of years, some of you start becoming American, or you change inside yourself.
Yeah.
So the band had kind of run its course.
So on the whole now, how do you look back on that whole American experience? Could it have been done any differently?
No, not really. I mean, I had offers to stay there. I had an offer an audition with Orleans,
Oh, yeah.
and all of that. But I thought, no. It affected us all deeply. To me, in different ways. To me, it was like getting basically a university degree in rock. I'd gone through primary school and high school here, and I went to America, and for 2 years I did a tertiary course in rock. basically. So I come out with a Bachelor of Rock, BR. You know?
A nice way of looking at it.
Yeah, you know.
Did you know pretty much straight away what you wanted to do with the rest of your career after that point?
Well, I'd spent a lot of time in an apple farm up in upstate New York with a big dog called Ralph. And Ralph and I would go off into this forest, and I sort of knew where the chipmunks lived and the hornets and stuff, so I'd sit there for a while and watch the chipmunks and think about things. And I started compiling a list of songs that I wanted to do that I'd never done when I was young, like stuff by the Animals and the Who and the Yardbirds and Manfred Mann and whatever, and that kind of stuff, and Righteous Brothers. And I thought, well, gee, why don't I go back and form a band just doing songs that I missed out on playing because I was playing blues that I liked. So that's how the big combo kind of eventually came about. And then I also decided that when I got back to form a band for a little while that was totally unlike the Dingoes. So I had a band called the Hired Hands.
That's right.
For 3 months I formed it. And the idea was to we played songs by Jaco Pastorius and all sorts of stuff, but no rural roots stuff at all. And that effectively, you know, drove away people in the droves, you know. They just ran away. So it then gave me a fairly clean slate on what I wanted to do.
Yeah. What happened with the big combo? Because it was a fantastic first album, but nothing beyond that.
Well, at the time I was a lyricist. I was not, well, I still am. I'm not really a songwriter. And nobody in the band was a real songwriter. You know, Mal Eastig worked hard at it, and I was also working with Tony Slavich. So by the time the album came around to do, I had enough stuff for a strong album, but nothing really for a second one. And we were doing quite well, and we had a very good financial sort of setup where the management were very good, which is Zev Isaac. They had an accountant, but Mal Eastig actually was a bookkeeper. So I could go into his room any day of the week on the road and say how much money we got. And I knew from a day-to-day basis, it came to a point where we were working for 6 weeks, and he said, we're only losing $1,000 a week. And in those days, that's how bands thought.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty well, we're only losing a couple of grand this week, you know. And I said, how long has this been going on? He said, about 6 weeks. And I said, how many people we got on the road? He said, 13. And I said, you got any songs? And he said, no. And I said, well, I ain't got any. How much money we got in the bank? And he told me, and I said, well, why don't we just give everybody, you know, I think it was 4 or 6 weeks notice or whatever it was, and give them all a bonus as well, and break this up and just split the money, because otherwise in 3 months we're going to have nothing.
Right.
So we got out while, you know, we put our egos to one side and we were quite realistic and just got out of it.
So it was just a basic thing while you were ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. For music, something you've dabbled in a bit over the years is acting. Is that something you'd like to do more of?
Yeah, if I had the space and time. Acting, I really enjoy, but you have to be kind of independently wealthy or absolutely crazy to do it. Because, you know, 1 minute you might be on a TV show, and then the next 3 months you got to find a way to make a living. And it's one of the toughest things to do in that sense. But I do enjoy it, that's for sure, because it gives me a chance to be somebody else.
Yeah. Tougher than music? Tougher life than making a life in music?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah?
Yeah. For the average guy, yes, I would say. I have the deepest respect for actors, because they're generally on the brink of starvation.
Now, the songwriter in you has come even further to the fore in recent years with your solo albums. Is that something you've been more focused on since getting away from band situations?
Yeah, I enjoy writing words. I mean, I haven't been particularly prolific in the last year or two, but I enjoy that. And I've always liked reading, and I've found it, as I've got older, I've actually been able to... I'm a late developer in that area, let's put it that way. And because Australia's got a bit tougher to live in, and that becomes much better for songwriters in terms that you got something to write about rather than lying on the beach and waiting for the next wave, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that you can get into now, and always when you get a fairly reactionary government, whether it be quite right like we have now or one that's left, they always stir up trouble. and then it gives you something to write about.
I guess it's not being as busy touring-wise, giving you more time to focus on things like songwriting?
No, because I've been working at a place here in Castlemaine called the Castlemaine Copy Centre, and I do the desktop publishing stuff here.
Uh-huh.
So I've spent the last couple of years getting more and more into programs on my Mac in that area, and now I've got to the point where I can actually go into a friend's place and record an album of songs that I've written with somebody, and then come out with a little CD, and I can come to work and I can design my cover and do the artwork and, and all the merchandising stuff or whatever that goes with it. So I'm kind of like, almost like a little factory if I wanted to go that way.
Yeah. What took you to Castlemaine initially?
A guy that was managing me by the name of Mick Ahern lived here at Harcourt, which is right next to Castlemaine.
Yeah, just down the road.
Yeah, and he, I've been coming here off and on for about 10 years, and I kind of like the place. It reminded me a lot of where I lived in America, in a place called New Paltz, which is near Woodstock. It's where Vassar College is, which is about 90 minutes or so out of Manhattan. But it was an apple farming area, and some cattle. And this area is apple farming and some sheep, and it's got a small percentage of alternative people, and it's got average farming, rural working people, and it's about 90 minutes, 75 minutes out of Melbourne. So it seemed an ideal place to live, and I knew from my experience in New York that if you wanted, you could actually commute from here into Melbourne if you felt so inclined. And it was in the middle of the state. Just made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Something else you've been involved with too is workshops on various aspects of music, songwriting being one. What would be the major point you would try to get across in a songwriting workshop?
Okay, there's something interesting that Mick Jagger said on the day in the life of Mick Jagger, which was a very, well, in his position, a very upper middle class sort of life. However, in one point somebody asked, he was writing some lyrics, in his normal, what type of style, and somebody said, these don't rhyme, and he said, you should never do that. When you're writing down thoughts, you should never really go for the rhyme, just go for the thought or the intent first, and then you can bring in the rhyme later. That's a very strong point. This is from lyrics. And the other one is to perhaps start off writing a letter to yourself, or like you're writing in a diary, or write it in a prose form, like a little short story or so forth, or a very small prose poem way. So you're not worrying about rhythm or rhyming or any of that. You just write. You're trying to get down an original thought, and then you rhyme it later. And the other one is sometimes in the mornings, when you're in the mood, is a really good time early in the morning to write. And Jagger said that too. Or when the world is quiet. In the morning, your mind is kind of, it's blank in terms of it hasn't got anything pressure from the day on it yet.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good time. I mean, some writers that I know that are very good spend most of the day sleeping and sort of write through the night.
It's like working with a clean slate, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing. Otis Blackwell is the other opposite. They wrote a lot of stuff that Elvis did. And Otis Blackwell would leave in the morning, his family, and drive to an office that had a piano in it. And he'd take his morning tea, and he'd have that at morning tea. And he'd take his lunch, he'd have that at lunch, and his afternoon tea. And then at 5 o'clock, he'd lock the door and he'd go home, and he was a family man.
Did it like a day job.
So he did it like a day job. So that worked for him,
Yeah.
With me, I tend to like to store things up, and then they'll just burst out when they want to.
Yeah.
And I like to go away into the wilderness somewhere with no distractions, and just lock myself away for a week or so with nobody, and do it that way. But that would drive a lot of people crazy, because they'd need more human contact. But I'm quite happy with a dog that wanders up with some kangaroos,
I guess what you're saying, it can be very much an individual thing, what works best for you.
Yeah, I mean, other people like Nick Smith's a good friend of mine. He's a great lyricist. And his house, when he was younger and really prolific, was just he'd lock himself in the bedroom. And all stuff's going on in the house. And so he could also work. He could also work in the middle of a riot.
What's the status of your live work these days? How much are you playing, and when you do, who are you playing with?
The core of what I do now is with Mick O'Connor, the keyboard player that was in the big combo, the organist.
Yep.
He plays piano with me, and he's the core, and then we add to that at the moment his son Tim, who works with Tim Neal and so forth, is on drums, a very good drummer, and Pip Avent, that lives up here in Castlemaine. We all live in the area, and Pip's was originally in the Coldstream Guards, but is regarded as about the best jazz tuba player in the state. So he plays tuba rather than bass.
Okay. Yeah.
And that goes to the fore. This year there will be some changes, probably in what I do, but those guys will still be working with me, in particular Mick O'Connor.
And just to wind up, Broderick, what would be, you had to pin it down, your proudest moment in music?
Oh, that's kind of a hard one. The one that emotionally always moved me was the Andrew Durant concert.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody was there for a collective reason other than themselves. And it was a very, very emotional evening. It was very good music as well, but not probably the best that I've played in terms of music.
Just a special night.
It was just a special night, yeah. I can't describe it any other. I remember going over to Bananas with Mal Eastick, and I got all broke down. I got all teary and stuff, you know, which grown men don't do.
And what's on your books for 2004? Any recording plans at all?
Yeah, quite a few. There'll probably be some changes this year. Where I slowly put together a best-of album.
Right.
Which covers, you know, I don't know how many years. And that'll be interesting. They go, wow, this guy was a spaceman here and a hippie here and farmer here. What's he doing?
Is that going to involve getting the rights to all your old stuff from various record companies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be hard. I mean, some of the EMI stuff might be a bit tough to find because the EMI tended to like to reuse the multi-tracks. So that's, you know, I think EMI is still run by old colonial plantation owners in England or something. Not here. The fellas are lovely here, but they do tend to, what they used to is reuse their multi-tracks. That's why a lot of the Spectrum stuff and that, you can't really enhance it very much because you're having to work off vinyl or a master tape.
Yeah. And what about new stuff?
I got a new song. I had a couple of new songs. I got an entire album that I've written with Matt Walker.
Oh, great.
That we want to record, and that will probably get done in the next year or two with new songs. We've got a way we want to record that. And then there's talk of maybe a blues album and album of other people's material, a few things. So I'm hopefully busy recording until I'm about 61. Good
to hear. Good to hear. Broderick, thanks so much for taking time out this morning from your day at the Copper Centre there.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in Littleton Street in Castlemaine, near the post office at the Castlemaine Copy Centre, so if anybody listening is driving through, we're there. Come in and have a cuppa.
Will do. I might even pop in myself next time I'm up there.
All right, mate.
Good on you, Broderick. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Take care, mate. Cheers.
See you.
Bye.